So I call the October 25th regular board meeting for the Lewes BPW to order. And so we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the
republic for which it stands.
So let the record show that the Earl Webb, Richard Nichols, and Barbara Curtis are here in the room, and Preston Lee is on by Zoom. And Andrew Williams, the mayor, Austin Kalaman, Robin Davis, and Mike Hoffman are here also. So, motion on the consent agenda?
So for the sake of how this is set up, you can pull the treasury report and anything else you want to pull so that you can provide that.
We'll pull the treasurer's report from the consent. And Press, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. All right. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So it's 5-0. Okay. So, Kim, you're up.
So I got a few statements for the monthly September, both revenues and I'm on mute, sorry. Both revenues and expenses are higher than budgeted. Revenue is higher than the expenses, so that's good. We received a $300,000 check from Delaware Electric Co-op. We had 3 payroll periods this month, and we also paid out for the inspections for Lodge at Historic Lewes. Our impact fees for Tower Hill and Lewes Waterfront Preserve came in fast this month. For our change in market value, we lost $137,000. This billing period was the hottest temperatures of the summer, which is unusual. We usually see that in the previous month. And we had the highest PCA, and we had a 32-day billing cycle, which we try to keep it at 30. So overall, we're performing well.
Just for everyone's, the Delaware Electric Co-op payment was for the CPCN rights that were split on that Mitchell Corner property.
Correct.
So it's a one-time payout.
So when you look at investments, I'm just curious.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, sometimes we take money out of investments, correct?
Correct.
Is that shown in that line? That's
It
not.
will not, because that's just our assets. It'll be on the balance sheet, not the revenues and expenses.
Okay. So I did some math.
Okay.
I'm not good at math. I did some math. If you go from January to September, which is what this does, the S&P was up 11.68%. The Dow was up 1.09%. The mid cap was up 2.95%. The next S&P tranche was the 600, was up 0.54%, and the Wilshire 5000, which is a lot of stuff, was up 10.45%. How can we possibly be down unless we're trying really, really hard? I know it's not you.
So our interest and dividend income is positive, but the adjustments for the market value, we are very much into the bonds or treasury.
What are they doing?
I believe they are negative this year.
They're negative.
Yeah, I believe that.
So
I thought bonds were up.
5% now over at M&T Bank.
Yeah.
So we need to do something different with these people because
We do have a money market account.
Working.
We do have a money market account that is a consistent percentage that we can move money to.
Yeah.
That's less risk, but
Are they within the parameters that we have in our policy?
they are outside of the parameters. I sent an email to Tim to let him know, and he is making changes to bring us back in.
It's a balance.
And I understand it, because what he thought was going to go down, went up, went down. And now that's
He rebalances at the end of a quarter, is how he explained it to us. But we will talk about this once we get to the policy discussion as well.
good.
Yeah.
But I think we need to. Yeah.
And for clarity on the DEC, that DEC is actually a payment that's held in escrow until the CPCN rights are adjusted through the Public Service Commission.
Thank you.
For our, not for that month, for our year to date is pretty quick. Our revenues are higher than budgeted. Our expenses are actually less than budget. So that gave us favorable performance, and all of our large variances are going to be seen on our second quarter adjustments.
When do we have Dawn coming in to talk about?
It'll be pretty soon.
Our quarterly, we're going right through it, guys. Our quarterly, July through September, our second quarter, revenues and expenses are higher than last year as expected. The operating income is up about $1.1 million from last year, and our bottom line is $1.56 million increase. After netting investment and market adjustments, and the investment income and market adjustments, we still lost $66,000. And historically, quarter two has the largest budget to actual margins, but the expenses were actually almost perfect.
The expenses, we have solids handling. We have consistently have battled Mother Nature when it came to the drying beds, so we've had to haul a lot. The beauty of our existing agreement with Sussex County for biosolids handling is that we've actually come to a short-term agreement until we get the piping put in at the digester for them to pull directly from it. Is that Clean Delaware is actually pulling from there, and they're going to Sussex County, and they're actually hauling it to Sussex County instead of hauling it to Pennsylvania, to Decorah. So we're essentially paying a transport fee, which is a lot cheaper than hauling it to Pennsylvania.
And if you look at the liquid assets charts, I added the ARPA funds that we received in June. And actually on here is the last 12 months, we did have a positive change in market value. So for our fiscal year, it's negative, but for the past 12 months, it's positive. And then this is the doozy, guys, for the budget adjustments. I'm going to go by utility, starting with electric. For utility sales, it'll be year to date plus the remaining budget with the adjustment of a penny PCA instead of the 4/5 of a penny that I originally put on there. Year to date or other is going to be year to date plus remaining. Our salaries and wages are reduced by the new employee that we were planning on hiring this year because we don't have the truck to hire him. Bad debt is year to date plus remaining, and Lua franchise is year to date, and the adjustments matching the adjusted revenues. Impact fees is year to date to and remaining. For water utility sales, it's year to date plus remaining. Salaries and wages is year to date plus remaining, and then I adjust it for the average of wastewater and stormwater for this year. Bad debt and then Lua franchise fee year to date plus remaining, and then adjustments for the revenues. Our depreciation is year to date plus remaining plus $728 per month for new assets. And I have a note on here to look it up of what that new asset is, so I would tell you guys, but I did not. Impact fees is year to date plus the current month, which I ran it on the 18th, and a 40% increase of the remaining budget, which is what we've been running on average for the year. For wastewater is year-to-date and remaining for the sales, salaries and wages, bad debt in lieu of franchise, and then for professional and contractual, I added another $19,000 for increase for Inframark. And for our interest expense, I put a full payment for the Headworks, but we're doing interest only payments. So I corrected that. So that is more favorable. And our impact fees actually should say a 40% increase on the remaining budget to match the water.
Does this amount for wastewater include the increase that we got from Infomark, the 4.6, whatever it was, or that's in this?
Yep, it's about $19,000 under professional and contractual.
So take the city, 182.
That is estimated, yes, for the year. And then stormwater, year-to-date and remaining for other revenue. But we did have a very large stormwater bill for White's Pond this month, which was $4,500. So I would look to adjust that to $38,684 instead of the $34,184 presented.
Why for White Pond?
It's revenue.
Okay.
It's not,
Yeah.
it's not expense
Correct.
because it's being billed out to the developer and the developer reimburses.
So when you get the GMB invoice, they actually like break down what they're working on.
Yeah.
So I put it through each utility. So when it becomes an asset, it's actually correct of what the utility is. Professional, contractual, bad debt is year-to-date and remaining budget. Depreciation, amortization is year-to-date plus remaining budget plus $893.75 per month for new assets. So it's only the stormwater that is an unfavorable adjustment. Everything else is quite favorable. Generally in the first quarter adjustments, I concentrate on expenses, and second quarter I do revenues, just because second quarter can jump all over the place with it being our best, generally our best quarter.
So the variance for wastewater is 62.9%. Is that inaccurate? Am I reading that right?
Where are you at?
Wastewater?
Yes. So it's still a negative bottom line, but 63% healthier. Yep.
Questions for Kim?
And unless there's any objections, these will be put in place starting next month on the statements according to our charter.
As presented.
Figure out from the consent
Yep.
agenda. So do they have a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So
Second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Kim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always detailed as usual.
You are the messenger. I understand that.
Yeah. Well, better messages. Yeah.
Okay. Inframark. Jeff?
Good afternoon. Okay, so from our report regarding the filters, UF Train 4, we completed a recovery clean on 2 weeks ago, hypochlorite recovery clean, and that's where we soak the membranes overnight in a hypochlorite solution to get rid of any organic fouling. Excuse me. And then the guys started deragging a module, a cassette from Train 3 end of last week. So we're cleaning now. Jeff, how would you say that? How did the membranes look this month? compared to in the past.
They were pretty good. They looked much better.
And then regarding the crane, and I appeared to have fixed the crane last week when Austin and Tom were out, and Barbara.
It did not involve a hammer, I will tell you that much.
So I don't have an update on that. It did perform well when we pulled the cassette in train 3. So we're going to watch it closely. And if we have any more issues, we're going to have to get somebody structural in to evaluate how to brace it better, I guess.
So my question is, was the impact of the crane on the cleaning that's going on now?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So it's better than it was. So we're moving forward.
Yeah. I guess just for everyone's benefit, the crane seems to be, if you've ever been in the building, it's spread on 2 rails, and the rails aren't tightly cross-tied, and they're not tied to the building. And so the crane seems to be cattywalking, which is causing, we think, it to hang up.
Moving on to solids handling. So we have Kubota membranes in the digester building to thicken the sludge going out. So it's the sludge coming from the trains is about 1% solids, and the Kubotas are supposed to thicken to 3%. And we're led the specs from the manufacturer say that we're supposed to be able to run it faster. So right now we're only running about 7 gallons a minute through the Kubotas, and he's telling Jeff that we should be able to get 15 or 20. So Jeff's been corresponding with him over the past several months. We changed out a transducer. We did some different chemical cleaning. He actually got the gentleman to come up here from, I think, Texas, to evaluate it, to look at it. You know, we're doing everything right. So during our next cleaning, they are going to, they're going to give us 2 or 3 membranes to replace, and then we're going to send the old membranes back to the manufacturer so they can evaluate it. So that would have a direct impact on hauling. So the thicker we can get it, the less hauling we have to do, the less water they're hauling to the county. More to come on that. We'll do our chemical cleaning for the fourth quarter this year, and that's when we'll pull the membranes. Pump stations. Harry Caswell is scheduled next week to replace the wet well piping at pump station 15. So that's a proposal that we got a PO from you guys for. And then another incident with the pump station. So after the power outage, and I'm not sure if you heard about this, but after the power outage, all the pump stations came on at the same time. We had a backup and a spill out of manhole. So we cleaned it up the best we could, did all the notifications. How much did you think it was?
We estimated between probably around 750 gallons.
So apparently there's a bottleneck in the sewer system. Was on Kings Highway.
It was between 17, which is at Allen Cove, and Drake Knoll. Apparently the line there is only a 6-inch line, and it backed up and came out of the manhole directly in front of Allen Cove.
So it may not have been an issue if we had, the shutdown was for 4 hours and didn't have the wet wells was full, but the wet wells were pretty full at 8:30 or 9 o'clock when they got the power back to us. So
Did it get onto any private property?
They ran down the Allen Cove and into the parking lot. We put lime down on the grass and reported it to DNREC.
Okay.
It didn't go on any waterways.
Okay.
And I think Emmett was out, right?
Yes, he was there with us.
I don't expect you to have the answer, but what is the capacity of all of our wet wells combined for future power outages? I know we've talked about staggering the starts, but I'm just curious in volume wise, what the total capacity of our wet wells are for the 20 whatever pump stations we have.
Yeah, we'll get the dimensions and calculate it for you.
Is that something meaningful or?
Just trying to think because when pump station 4 failed, that was really the test.
Yeah.
That's where your bottleneck was couldn't pump from 4. So we basically were equalized between 4 and 3. So we would pump 4 down and then let 3 rise and then pump 3 down and vice versa.
I mean, if it's not meaningful, I don't want to send anyone on wild goose chases. Just was curious.
I think you probably have more understanding which pump stations have backup generation that continue to pump, because that's probably where you have more of an issue, because those that have backup generations continue to pump while those that didn't pump. So you just filled the system up all the way.
Yeah, they're pumping forward, and it's very interactive because then the downstream wet wells get filled.
Yeah.
And we would talk to Austin last week about potentially getting a smaller pull behind generator for the smaller pump stations. So, because, the bypass pump's big, and for those small pump stations, it's too big. But if we had a portable generator, we go around. A lot of the pump stations already have the manual switch, and a plug. So, we could power those pump stations. The guys could just, go to one pump station to the next and up and down and move on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then regarding personnel, we did have, as of last Tuesday, we had two vacancies. So one's the electrician that we've been talking about. Jeff and I interviewed 8 electricians so far, and the issue we're running into is a lot of the master electricians applying don't have industrial experience, so they're mostly residential. So we've had some journeyman electrician that have more commercial experience that we've been talking to. And we're trying to figure out it. According to the regulation, we only need a licensed electrician, license in the state of Delaware. So we have in our agreement a master electrician. So I wanted to discuss that with you guys. If there being an that could be amended if we find a journeyman that is licensed in Delaware and has more industrial experience. So,
what do you do for the work that those guys would have been doing? We have one gentleman that was going to retire, so we brought in another operator behind him. So he's retiring at the end of the year. So we have a total of 5 people right now. But the electrician, we were going to pull the trigger last week, but then another person applied and we interviewed him this morning. So trying to get a good fit there. But for right now, we're okay. If we have an electrical issue, we'll have to call a contractor, and obviously that'll be on at our cost. But we've had, as of this afternoon, we had 6 applicants for the other position, and Jeff's networking to try to get somebody licensed, a licensed wastewater operator in. But we have had applicants. The job market's changing a little bit. We have more applicants for open positions now. So, but we intend to get them filled as quickly as possible, especially the electrician position. We're still paying for it.
You are correct, but we have 5, and we have 5 operators and the open electrician position. So really, we only have 1 open position that you're paying for. Yep.
So.
So
Yeah.
what would be involved in us approving a journeyman electrician? And then would there be a reduction in our monthly?
The journeymen that have industrial experience, cost as much as the master. So, I mean, we can be transparent with the salaries. Maybe not in a public meeting, but that's we're just looking to fill the position with the best person we can find.
I ask you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think I would consider that. I mean, it's on a case by case basis. If the person was so well qualified that we could feel comfortable with them, I think it might be a case by case approval rather than a blanket approval.
Yeah, we can work with Austin with the resume and show them the resume. And, we'll let them know what our salary will be.
Yeah, I
we
think
can offer.
Russ makes an excellent point. I mean, because we don't want to open up to any journeyman
Right.
who is qualified.
Mhm.
So, yeah, if you can work with the staff and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Do you know what it takes to get from a journeyman to a master? What qualifications would they need, or could they get them in a reasonable amount of time?
My understanding, talking to our previous electrician, was that it's essentially just a more difficult test. There's no additional schooling or experience required. It's a harder test, and a lot of people don't want to take it.
Okay.
That's basically what I got from him on that. Because so essentially, any journeyman could take the master's test if they chose to. Many of them just don't want to go through the hassle.
Maybe you could find somebody that would be willing to do that if we took them on, right away.
Yeah, and it's something we've been discussing. We could put in an offer letter that need to get master electrician's license in a certain period of time. So
Yeah.
that's all I have on my notes. Anybody have questions?
I had a couple. First of all, I see a couple of the projects are slipping and they're GMB projects, so I don't expect you to answer that, Mike, but that's disappointing to see. I wondered about within the maintenance fee expenditures, there were a bunch of things ordered for pump station 16, but I didn't see anything in the report about what happened there.
Yeah, we had changed out the control panel at pump station 16. So some of our expenses are, they're lagging from that project. Depending on credit card expenses, if the person who purchased it, their credit card, their expense report on time or not. So that's kind of why they're creeping in.
Okay, because it's confusing because the list shows September floats, whole saw, parts, panel.
Yeah, and I believe that was the electrician's, all the electrician's expenses on his P card, which are getting late.
I wondered, I see that the drying bed valve replacement is on hold, and that certainly seems to make sense if we're going to be pumping. I mean, why are we worried about valves?
We have the valves. We purchased them. One of the worst bed was replaced. And originally they were going to replace the valve, actually subgrade on the backside of the drying beds. And when our guys went out and took a look, they actually bolted it on the front side. So it's a little bit easier to access because you don't have to actually excavate down. So I think the idea was once we get the whole thickening situation figured out, then we can work towards replacing the rest of them. But we also are going into the season that provides us the least amount of support when it comes to weather. So we have everything to do it, and we replaced the worst one so far. The other ones are still operational. I think they're just really tight. if
they're hard to get on,
Yeah.
but I mean, it was a discussion we had. It's not a priority for us for the winter. So if we collectively decide to start using the drying beds next summer, then we'll work with Public Works and get them installed.
we're doing that ourselves. That's our personnel.
Yeah, thanks.
I know I've been the one who's harped on the measuring,
Mhm.
and I think I may have been a little bit off base, but not completely. I come from a land of 4160 and 13 kV. Measuring of low voltage breakers seems to be a little bit lower priority, but testing the breakers for sequence settings and everything else is something that's supposed to be done every couple of years. And so shifting the discussion, are we doing any testing of the breakers?
And we have not. I mean, that isn't something we have the equipment to do infrared surveys for loose connections, but that's not something we've done at any of our other plants. We can look into, the procedure for that.
Because, for a simple breaker, typically over 100 amps, but for a simple breaker, it's a lower priority, but it's when you have cascading breakers. For example, like at the digester, where you've got breakers on both sides, that if the set points aren't set appropriately and aren't verified to be correct, you get inadvertent tripping, or you could potentially put the system at risk. So, and that's not anywhere near as extensive of a testing as buying mega equipment. But I think maybe when you get an electrician on board that has experience in the industrial world, this is something that is relatively common.
And I can check around with our other plants and see what they're doing. We might have procedures already in house.
So it's sequencing, inadvertent trips, and then obviously personnel safety. If those calibrations go out, you're not protecting the personnel either. So
Yeah,
or equipment.
I mean, we have plants and electricians across the country that are out of my purview, so I can check with some of the other regional managers.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind doing that, that'd
Sure.
be great.
Also, you talked about the hoist that needs to be repaired. Did I understand that correctly? In one building,
That's what
Yeah,
Mike was talking
the
about.
process
crane
building. Yeah,
has it been fixed? Is that the hoist?
To lift the membranes.
Yeah.
It's a 5-ton.
5 ton. Yeah. So there's a hoist, and then there's a trolley system that moves it back and forth, and then a hand trolley system that moves it left or right. And we had the contractor they did the work that they that they proposed. And then after we tried to use it, was really far out of kilter, but then I moved it all the way to the stop and it realigned, and then it's been fine since. But it's like Tom said, when I was pulling on it with where it was pulling really hard, the whole thing was shaking,
See the
so it appears like it may be a structural issue, and not necessarily the mechanics of the trolley.
Because here it said that on September 8th, that you guys have done an inspection and it was
Of that train, no, there's cranes at the pump stations too. I think you're referring to one of the pump stations.
on 2 and then profit.
Yeah.
And then the hoist.
Yeah, the hoist. I mean, I'm not sure. I'd have to, go back into the work orders. But I mean, the hoist works fine. It's the trolley system that takes it back and forth. So if that was inspected and it says it's fine, then we need to correct something.
There's trolley 1, trolley 2. It says that they were all checked. There was no issues.
Okay.
Just curious.
Yeah, we'll follow up on that.
I had one other thing, and it's about the Veolia report.
Mhm.
And I noticed the same problem last month, where they talk about, right at the end, where they talk about the leap aeration distribution and leap time and leap high versus leap low. They're saying it was 23.1% versus 16.2% of the time last time, but the prior month was 2.2%, and they made that same kind of error. I don't know if this is all computer generated or whether you have any say in what Veolia sends us or what, but
We've had suggestions before, but yeah, I'll look to follow up on that. I didn't notice that. I mean, the high leap is, when the TMPs are higher, it's in high leap more often. Our flows were actually pretty high certain parts of September, so that would increase the TMPs, and then that would increase the time that it's in high leap.
I'm not commenting on the time it was in high leap, just the comparison with the prior month.
Yeah, and we can follow with Xenon on that.
Okay, thanks.
I have 2 more. So the maintenance budget. So currently we're 27,000 over the budget. Do you have a forecast for the end?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's one.
This is the end?
Well,
oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, there's October. Yeah.
There's one more.
Yeah, there's one more month. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what there were no big ticket items purchased so far in October.
I think the biggest thing was a pump. So nothing big though. It was a bleach pump.
Yeah.
Pump.
And do you have this in the financials?
They do send a report of itemized of what they sent. I haven't.
No, but I mean for projection for the end, because that's where the tally up comes.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the overage was already on one of the invoices, and I provided Kim backup for that. So that was $15,000. So, and then we'll just.
It's 17 cents.
Roughly.
Yeah.
And the last one I have is also on the
Forward bill. That's why.
Yeah.
On the Veolia report. Bear with me. Age is getting a hold. This is about, the train one performance versus the other ones. I thought in the past, Veolia had made the recommendation to favor the other 3 trains to even out or did I miss something along the line?
I know you brought that up last week. I don't recall that. Do you recall from?
So when I spoke to Veolia previously, we were running the trains manually. We would decide which trains we ran. When I spoke to them, they recommended that we actually go based off of the system, letting the system decide which trains would run. So we did that. We've gone back to the system will determine which train has been off the longest, and then it will choose that train the next time we need one. Prior to that, we were running them manually on which ones we wanted to run, and they actually recommended against it.
Right. I mean, do you remember this conversation, Austin, a while? I think it might have been when Matt was out.
It may have been because I wasn't there, and I don't recall it. But
I mean, if Viola is happy with it, the way it's being operated, I'm fine. I just remembered that conversation, and I think it was when Matt was out for his site visit.
It's not creating any issues, and and they're all being getting the same wear. I would think that's got to be the most beneficial, for the system because of not to wear one train out, so,
And I think that's what they're saying
Yeah.
is that since train one, but the other thing was, is train one really operating that way?
and
Or is this an instrumentation issue?
and we're gonna do the acid clean here in November, so hopefully that, if it is real fouling, that will help. And then they said they have different chemicals that we could try too for, but it's not climbing. It's it's higher, but it hasn't been climbing.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
No,
Press?
no.
Okay. Thank you guys very
All right.
much.
Thank you. Everybody have a great night. Thanks.
So,
President's report, 5. So I attended mayor and city council. We had a strategic planning prep meeting for BPW to set ourselves up for the next 5-year strategic plan. We had a tabletop exercise.
Excuse me, Tom, who was with that, with the meeting?
Austin,
Patrick McCoy with Spot Stevens and McCoy.
yeah.
Okay,
It was a prep meeting to see what their recommendations were, and we'll be bringing that back to the board probably in the November, December meeting on, what the recommendations are there.
now, as I remember it, Spot Stevens brought that, the guy that that facilitated that. I don't think he was a staff member. Is that your memory? Does anybody else remember that? And that, so my question would be, can he get that same person back because he was excellent, or would we be starting with someone else?
I believe his name was Brian. Don't remember his last name. And from what our initial conversations are with Patrick, he was trying to gauge whether or not it would be a full-blown strategic planning rehashing, or if it would just be kind of the extension of the existing, updating it with current events. And that's what he was basing everything off of. I had to send him a bunch of information to take a look at, and then
Okay.
base what he thought the next steps would be or look like.
Yeah, and Patrick didn't feel that we needed to go back to square zero.
Where one?
That, first of all, Spot Stevens already has a lot of our background. And secondly, that they could work with what we've done since then to move things forward. So it would be a more streamlined process, because for those that weren't here,
There's nobody here other than you.
Yeah, I would just question him if he has the same team, because that's, that's important. That'd be interesting.
but it was a very, very intense and lengthy process with interviews of the staff, interviews, meetings with the board, interviews with other parties. And it took, I don't remember, 4 months, 5 months. It was, so he didn't feel we needed to go that far.
And I don't know, has everybody seen the copy of that final report that they did? Or
I present the update.
Barbara,
No, I don't think I've seen it.
I think that'd be good for everybody to see before we get moving forward.
Did I see it?
I think I sent an
Oh,
electronic copy.
No, because you were at the board meeting.
right. I did see it, and and I thought it needed updating.
Yes,
Yes.
because and that's
That's
what,
right.
Patrick, basically we've worked through almost everything
Yeah.
that was in the strategic plan,
Right.
and it's time for new goals.
Yes.
Okay. The tabletop exercise, I think I'm gonna let Austin talk about that to a extent, but there'll be more details on that. Was everyone at the tabletop except press?
I think so. Yeah.
I wasn't.
Earl? No?
Went to Anne Marie's going away breakfast. I met with Sarah McCabe, who's running for Congress to replace Lisa Blunt Rochester when Lisa Blunt Rochester moves to the Senate. So, and I encourage everyone to go and look at her website. The woman is amazing. Her knowledge, her background, her experience. She served in the Obama administration. She served on Vice President Joe Biden's staff. She comes with a breadth of knowledge, much more than her age. I met with Rex Huxtable to discuss what our priorities are and ask for some assistance in some matters. And I also met with Bethany Hall Long. So trying to reach out to all the powers that be that, we get on their radar screen. There's a GHD update on the wastewater treatment plant with the county present. And so we're looking for the final report from GHD the second week of November.
Before the holiday.
So GHD is doing the study for the ocean outfall, and they're expecting to have it done by the second week in November.
Which part? Which outfall?
From
Through the park, under the park?
Yeah. Not through the park,
Yeah.
under the park.
So were they able to drill the holes they needed on the property to get decent data? No.
Some, but
I
not.
wonder if that will hold up the report.
It won't.
It won't.
I think the plan is they're going to use some assumptions, but make the recommendation that
Yeah, they have profiles from the Rehoboth Beach outfall and from some other places, and so they are kind of making a smear of what they believe the geo underneath is before being able to go out and do those bores.
concern was length.
Yeah.
Once you get to that 5 to 10,000 linear feet of drill, your parameters get a little bit tighter, and it's a pretty sizable pipe. So,
Yeah, actually, I thought they said at 5,000 foot they were starting to have real concerns of return.
yeah, and they're talking about a 10,000 foot drill. That's nearly 2 miles.
Yeah. So we'll be hearing more about that, but other than that, it's, we're on hold waiting for that. Sorry, I can't read my writing. We had a discussion with the city, specifically Carolyn and Ellen Lorraine, on the building and the air conditioning issues. So I think we'll be discussing it later here, and I think you're going to be discussing it also, Andrew. Understand. I think that's it. So, Austin?
So we did participate in the tabletop. I could not participate because I was an evaluator. And so
It was in Venezuela.
yeah, so we worked through that. We had an after action report. Both the board and the city are working on also updating their emergency operations plan. So we had an initial meeting right after the tabletop, and we have another meeting scheduled. We internally started working through our portion of the EOP, and then we're going to collaboratively sit down, go through what we have, and start working through a final product. We also had the meeting with the EPA that was a couple months ago after our initial discussions with them at the conference down in the Tricon conference in Ocean City. The EPA did circle back with us. They confirmed that they did want to do and include us in a regional assessment. So I circled back with them. I haven't heard back yet. Really just looking for what a regional assessment is and who they would include. We don't know yet. And so I just threw out, one of the questions that you guys may have is who they would look at doing it, or if they would look for us to provide a recommendation of similar communities that have, maybe in this case, it's a resiliency discussion. So other issues related to flooding that may be from a canal, Bethany or South Bethany. So we're still waiting to hear back from that, but it sounds pretty promising. We have the household hazardous waste this weekend from 10 to 2. Weather looks to be pretty good, surprisingly. We went through the mountainous feat of applying for the CPCNs for the 5 properties. So kudos to Robin and to Pete for putting that together, because that was absolutely insane. It's a huge effort to do that, and we were literally up against the last couple minutes and hours of our submission. So we worked with the Public Service Commission, so kudos to them too for helping us out. So those were submitted. We have to advertise in 2 different news outlets, which were Sharon coordinated. So we're working through that. We had a meeting today between DNREC, DHSS, the city, and the BPW on the Hornkill project to just walk through kind of the background, the details of it, try and brainstorm some ideas. So we're working through that. We did the wastewater treatment plant quarterly walkthrough with GMB. The common header project is moving forward, probably out to bid in the next week or 2, Ben. We had a discussion last week, if my memory serves me right, to just finalize everything that are on the plans. One of the things that came up was the finished water line and what the age and the material of that pipe was. So the plans Ben came back with showed that it was completely replaced back when the plant was redone in the 2012 to 14 range. So we went out and confirmed that it was a ductile iron main that runs down the wellfield lane that was replaced. So that's good. We don't have to, it gives us a little bit more peace of mind that it's not a 1950s pipe like we're replacing. So everything looks good there. That still falls under the water tower project. It was one large funding mechanism, but we're able to actually bid the projects out in 2 since they are kind of scoped a little bit different. This one's obviously very, pipe centric versus the water tower being more, you're building a water tower. So we're moving forward with that. Hopefully get something back to you guys to approve potentially at the November, December board meeting. Otherwise, we'd have a special meeting probably to award that. Robin and I attempted to attend yesterday and attended today the EPA workshop. It was a tabletop exercise for water utilities in the state. It was eye-opening because their scenario, we did a tabletop for the electric, so we listened to that, and we did it for this. And some of the chemicals that they influenced into the scenario were hard to pronounce, but we worked through it, and it was eye-opening stuff that we didn't really think through that we would have to do in those circumstances. I think that's it.
So I just want to, once again, the staff has been pulling an inordinate amount of weight. I know everyone is overloaded, but, your efforts are greatly appreciated. I mean, going from the outage into all these projects we have going. So I just want to really thank Austin and the staff for everything you're doing.
Here.
Yep.
So is there any update on the wellhead protection area study?
No. We assumed it was going to be a 2-year study. We're working through some other items with DNREC now. So I foresee it taking all the 16 months to 24-month lead time. There's your commitment to running next year.
What about The Lewes Beach stormwater assessment, wasn't that supposed to be done in September? Do we have that yet?
So we ran into a little snag in that we discovered a lot of DELDOT infrastructure, infiltration basins, and perforated pipe that we want to inspect because they might create solutions for certain areas. And we ran into a problem in that we having a hard time flushing them. So that flushing exercise we're hoping to happen in the middle of November, and then we'll be able to finalize our report after that. I don't want to finalize the report without that data because, like I said, it could influence the recommendations.
And to go along with that, we were assisting in any way we can to do that. And our vac truck was down for about a month for about $40,000 worth of repairs. So we just got it back on Tuesday.
Our relatively new truck was was down.
Yeah. And
Wow.
one was $37,000. So put that in perspective.
Yeah. My God.
So
Was there any guarantee or warranty that was left?
no, it was because it was on the actual vacuum unit on the back. So there was a hole that actually got worn. I think it was on the emission system, if I'm not mistaken. It was a hole through the blower on the back, so you had to replace the whole unit.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Because of sand?
I think it was heavier debris than sand.
Okay.
You know, if you some of the backfill, depending on where you're at in the city, some of it has like old bricks. So you suck a brick through a 6-inch.
Yeah.
It's got to hit somewhere.
Yeah. Hmm.
But we're not the only ones. I'm going to add that in there, that there are a lot of people that are experiencing on the equipment side, and we'll talk about it later in the meeting, is that like our equipment went down, and we typically call, for example, Harry Caswell, one of his trucks was down for several weeks, not the same issue, but still dealing with the same serviceability.
Right. Hmm.
All right, at this point then, I'm going to turn it over to Charlie O'Donnell for a presentation on the stormwater infrastructure.
Tom, can I interject something?
Sure.
And Charlie, this is addressed to you, I guess. When we have something like this to review, a report like this, it would be great if we could have it in our package in advance to be able to review it, so we could ask, intelligent questions. So if we could get these types of reports like a week before, when all the rest of our documents are produced, I know that's tough sometimes, but that should really be your due date rather than the meeting date. So if you can do that, that would be greatly appreciated.
Carly did get it to me by Friday, so that is my fault. It was in your, I believe it was in the hard copy. That's
It's not in the hard copy.
I'm sorry.
Not in the hard copy that I picked up. No.
It's not-
I think you put them down there early, because you usually put them down there on Wednesday.
Maybe. It's not
Sorry,
Charlie.
Charlie.
No, it's okay. I'm after 30 years of experience, I'm well aware of that 1 week, ahead of time, if not two. So, yeah, definitely keep that in mind. Thank you. So I didn't know whether you wanted to offer any opening statement on this, exactly what we're doing here.
So this stems from the discussion from the joint capital projects meeting from the end of August, where we said that stormwater is a common topic that's being discussed and brought up. Obviously, with sea level rise, the influence of heavier rainfalls and more frequent storms. And so when we had our last meeting, we discussed having a more holistic approach to stormwater, understanding where our benchmark is, and understanding kind of where, to put it frankly, the highways are for stormwater in the city of Lewes. And so what Charlie did is he put together a presentation that's very similar to what he did for the resiliency committee. And so this is kind of that. And then Charlie incorporated some of the Duffield reports that were done
2012.
circa 2012. So I think that's kind of the benchmark. I mean, this is really trying to give you an understanding of what's out there, and then you guys can kind of decide if you want to do like a formal workshop and discuss it further. But for you guys to be able to understand it, this is kind of vomiting everything that we have and that we've collected over the past several years.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go through every drainage area and stormwater outfall that's throughout the city that's under the board's purview, but I am going to show you several of them that are pretty big and other ones that are very interesting. The Duffield report that was completed in 2012, of course, it was based on the infrastructure in place at that time, but you can discern from their mapping efforts what the general drainage areas are for each of the outfalls and each of the stormwater collection systems. So next sheet, next slide. There you go. It's not centered up very good and you can hardly see it. I don't know if we can. Oh, that one's pretty good. Yeah. Gotcha.
That one for you.
Yeah, that's a little better. So anyway, this is just general stuff. The one on the left, the photo on the left is the 48-inch discharge at the overfalls pipe that not everybody's aware of, that there's a stormwater outfall right there, but there is. And I'll show you that drainage area because that's probably the biggest drainage area outfall that we have inside the city, hence the largest outfall pipe at 48 inches.
Of course, it doesn't blow hard enough to get the muck out.
No, you're right about that. Yeah. So every so often it has to be dredged out. Maybe, yeah. The one in the middle is Bayview Avenue under its previous condition. When there were just infiltration basins in the middle of the street that were ineffective. So the city addressed and the board addressed that project 7 years ago. There's complete porous asphalt, and that road is actually slightly pitched from the sidewalk side to the dunes. And to my knowledge, in my field investigation, under even the hardest storms that we have, that street stays really dry. And that's just, emphasizing where we can use porous in our stormwater management toolbox. And then the one on the right is Coleman Avenue. And again, we use the stormwater best management practice to the left there. That's a permeable paver system that has an underdrain pipe, I want to say 4 to 5 feet underneath the pavers, that when it really rains hard and it won't infiltrate through the soils entirely, that underdrain pipes there to collect it and discharge it into the collection system on Kings Highway, which may or may not be DelDOT's.
Charlie, on these roads, both of those are relatively, you said, newer systems.
Yeah.
Are you judging you observe? Is that really the only way of telling whether it's more effective than it was previously or more effective than another system? Or is there any, there's no way to measure the amount of water that you were capturing versus now, right?
Well, what we do on these, what we can do and what we've done on other locations where we especially have porous asphalt is run 3-year post-installation infiltration tests on the asphalt and see if it's still performing. I've told the story many times. When we first did Bay Avenue and we ran an average of 20 or so infiltration tests across the entire length of Bay Avenue, the average infiltration rate was 55 inches per hour. Never rains that much, even in our crazy storms. But I think it was 3 years later, it was down to 11 inches per hour on the average, which is still really good. But we knew we'd have some degradation of the performance. There is just the eyeball test because, if you go out there during really hard, intense storms, and if it's not ponding at all, it's working well. Yeah. But there is that degradation over time part of it.
So you're doing the test by pouring water on the top of the surface, right?
Yeah, we hire on asphalt. We hire a geotechnical scientist to do it, and they have an ASTM approved test that they use. It's not that complicated. You're right. You just put a tube down there and make sure it doesn't leak around the edges. We did run it on a certain clamshell driveway where that keeping it from draining either out through the bottom along the edges, no matter how well we caulked it, or just the fact that it's got a lot of storage in, say, a clamshell or stone driveway like that. That's not an ASTM approved procedure just yet, but we've been working on that through some other avenues.
I'm mentally channeling someone across me who has pictures of the water not coming down from above, but up from the bottom. Right? Is that something so that your test would be really best results? Because if water's coming up from the bottom, which it tends to do now, right, that would stop it more.
So the way it works is you aren't supposed to put, and we never have in the past, installed a porous system unless you have a certain distance of 2 feet or greater between the seasonal groundwater level and the bottom of what your porous asphalt section would be. So I'm not sure exactly where he observed that, but my guess would be it probably isn't where we have porous asphalt, because we actually, made sure that was the case. That said, Alaska Avenue might not quite meet that, but we still, we haven't gotten there yet, but we still feel like we probably will get benefit from a porous system there too, even though the groundwater is pretty high.
Water towers are priming sediment control there, and we talked about putting porous materials down to assist. Doesn't work. Clay layer, it just wasn't produced to utilize it. Which there are pockets throughout there.
Yeah, spread the word, because everybody seems to think we live in a very sandy soil area, and I would say a majority of our soils are well infiltrated, but not all of our soils. Kind of like what Austin just said.
We blame you for the clay, just so you.
That's okay. I can bear that. I can bear that, Brian. Next slide. So these are just some basic overall system stormwater facts and figures. About the city side and beach side. When I did this report 2 years ago, the city was 4.5 square miles. It's about that now. I don't even know if there's been anything further annexed, if it has.
Waterfront preserve.
I think I had included that at the time. Yeah. 2,900 acres. It's a city side and beach side drainage systems, obviously, with a lot of other that's the case with a lot of our infrastructure split on both sides. The BPW maintains the catch basins and piping. The city maintains the streets and the curbs that are related to the collection system. Just for your information, elevations on the city side vary from 10 to 14 feet. And I know exactly where that 14-foot area is. And if you want to know, we'll let you know. No, pardon me? No, it's close though. Not far. It's actually the area around Madison, Monroe,
Adams
Avenue. Yes, thank you. It's over in that area where it's actually the peak height, and then it gets higher as you move out to the well field too. So those elevations are 10 to 14 based on NAVD 88, which is the datum that we use on all our projects. The beachside elevations, on the other hand, vary from 2 to 11. Strangely enough, it doesn't come natural, but some of the highest elevations are right at the beach, and the lower ones are back towards the canal. So I said 2012. It's actually a December 2014 study that Duffield did, where they identified 975 catch basins, junction box, and all the outfalls. There's probably more of all of those now, based on development and annexation since that time.
The typical height of the outfalls, 25 outfalls, because when the water comes up that high, it can actually go the other way, right?
Yeah, every outfall varies, but I would say every outfall is underwater. If it discharges to the canal, it's underwater at least part of the natural tide cycle, if not all of it. And we try to address that via what we call tide flex valves that don't allow the tide to come back in on its normal cycle, but it does allow water runoff to run through the piping system.
Is that on all piping systems?
It's not on every single one. I know it's on the ones that are newer that we actually, designed and put in place. So for instance, there is one that comes down the beach side of Market Street, goes straight across and discharges into the canal, and it's tied into the Safe Harbor pond that's right along in front of Alaska Avenue. And when they first put that pond in, it used to back up. The tide used to back up into that pond. You know where I'm talking about? Right in front of Hotel Blue, right along the road there. And then we put one of those tide flexes in the system, and it's never had a problem since then.
I never knew why that was better, but it definitely was. So
yeah. So there's 25 outfalls to the Lewes-Rehoboth Canal. At the time of the study in 2014, there were 7 to the Canary Creek watershed. That also now includes Waterfront Preserve, Fisher's Cove, Wilby, Old Town, and White's Pond. Will actually be tied into the canal outfall system.
But the Fisher's Cove outfall will not be BPW.
No, because that's coming directly from their final stormwater management facility.
I think this study looked at Lewes as a whole, meaning it identified all drainage within Lewes, no matter ownership. It just,
So I just wanted to clarify.
No, that's an excellent point, Tom, because to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, Austin and Robin, but the board doesn't operate and maintain any stormwater management ponds or facilities on private property. They may or may not operate and maintain the piping system leading to those ponds and facilities, but not the facilities themselves. That's usually on the HOA. And that will be the case with Fisher's Cove. There is some runoff that's directed to the DRBA, DelDOT stormwater system on Freeman Highway. So we all know, some of us better than others, that there's a big ponding problem in front of Dairy Queen. And when we did our preliminary work on Alaska Avenue several years ago, we reached out to DelDOT, and they were doing, concept level work at that time. And we actually got a concept drawing from them. Then when we were directed to actually start the project last month, we reached out to them again and found out that work had halted on that project, but I believe some progress has been made with DelDOT to kick that back up and get it going again. So that would be something that would, depending on what they finally come up with, at least from their concept plans, it would be something that would be integrated into the Alaska Avenue design to take that runoff from that's collects in front of Dairy Queen and down Cape Henlopen Drive and direct it out to the wetlands behind Alaska Avenue. We'll see how that plays out. I don't have all the answers on that one yet. Next slide. So this is where I go into some of the major stormwater drainage sheds. This is what I call the Washington Avenue outfall watershed. And the big yellow line moving to the right is the outfall from the foot of Washington Avenue underneath the bicycle trail through piping that goes beneath Freeman Highway. And then there's a pretty sizable ditch that is oftentimes, if not always, covered in Phragmites, and it ends up in White's Pond, which then eventually discharges out to the canal. And that, you can see that at the end of that bright yellow line. That's the canal near Gills Neck Road. It's a 70-acre watershed. It goes from Dewey Avenue. It includes Franklin and Schley. Almost all the way out to Savannah Road, but not all the way. But that whole highlighted area is the drainage runoff that gets into the streets, runs through piping, and discharges at the foot of Washington Avenue through that system I just described to ultimately discharge to the canal.
Charlie, do you know if so where that yellow line is? I mean, do we have easements for that piping? Is there any is open area?
It's not piping. It's
not all pipe.
Yeah, I think there might be a pipe underneath Gills Neck Road, a culvert pipe, but it's all ditch except for Gills Neck Road. Actually, there's a pipe from Gills Neck Road out to the canal that we probably do not have an easement, but I can't swear to that.
DRBA is involved with that too, because it goes into the DRBA right away, and I think it does
the whole length. Or
so once it goes from Washington, that property, I believe it goes through that property, and once it gets out to Freeman, then it dumps. I believe it goes into a ditch line for DRBA, and then it follows through.
Well, when they built Freeman Highway, they disrupted the natural flow pattern, and they didn't fix it with the properly sized culvert pipe. That culvert pipe that we have like twin, I forget what it is, 36 or 24-inch pipes at the foot of Washington Avenue that go underneath the bike path. And then you're right, it does discharge into the ditch right there on that side of Freeman. Then it goes through like a much smaller pipe that goes underneath Freeman Highway and gets into the ditch that leads to White's Pond.
Done as part of the DRBA project on Freeman Highway.
Yeah, so that was there years ago. And we just didn't put another pipe underneath there when we did all the upgrade to Washington Avenue. And it hasn't been a problem in terms of backing up onto Washington Avenue. That used to be really bad. I don't know if you lived there back then, but before that system was put in place, there'd be water all the way back up to Schley Avenue, just backed up 2 feet during a heavy storm event.
Well, actually, Washington Avenue was redone.
Yeah.
It flooded out the house. Yeah.
Yes.
That is correct.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Next slide. Okay. So this is the beach side. It's not quite as clear as I delineated on the other slide, but generally that whole area in the photograph is part of a system that eventually discharges directly adjacent to the Savannah Road Bridge. GMB completed a study in 2007 of that drainage area. I guess I marked it in red, which you can't see very well, but GMB did a study on that whole drainage area, and we came up with a number of, you can see it in red now. We came up with a number of recommendations for improvement. I know one of them that was completed was, if you've ever driven down Market Street, there's a culvert pipe about halfway down. When we did this study, that was completely corroded corrugated metal pipe that was replaced with I think it's HDP. No, I think it's actually RCP, and then paved back over. So if you go out there now, we don't have the problem. We were really afraid that it was going to fail. The road was going to fail. It all ties into a piping system by the Daily Market, the Lemon Tree, Beacon Hotel that runs actually through their property down to that discharge point by Savannah Road Bridge. And when we investigated it, it's an old system that has some real issues that we probably want to address at some time. Things such as one pipe slopes up before it gets to a pipe that slopes down. It's just not like positive slope all the way to the discharge point. Yeah, it's trying to bend the laws of physics there. And what ends up happening is you get some sediment build up in the low spots, and then the water has to build up to a certain level to get over the high points. So we've got all those identified. I will reiterate them as part of our beachside stormwater study as things that as recommendations to address.
And
Sure.
You're aware of one of the brothers' Quill's request there.
Yes. Yeah. What the mayor's referring to is a potential filling in of the Midland Avenue ditch so that the homeowner can access a landlocked parcel, I guess you'd call it. Yeah, I know. That was a bad choice of words probably. But, that was, I haven't seen or heard anything of that project for 3 months, but I'll probably hear something tomorrow now. We'll see how it goes. But that I would probably not recommend.
The system?
No. What's inside that drainage area? Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Charlie, is it possible as kind of within these drainage areas and as you kind of track where the outfalls are and where the water goes, where easements exist, where easements don't, so we can get a sense of kind of what is there. I mean, there's a lot of layers to this, but it would help to know where there are actual easements and maintenance responsibilities spelled out, where there isn't, as we kind of piece together the picture. Yeah, and unless I do a complete study, it would be me piecing it together as we go, making improvements. This information that I'm providing the board tonight is a lot of it's based on the study that was done in 2014 because it identified the outfalls and the piping leading to those outfalls. So it's pretty easy to delineate the drainage sheds. But yeah, I got it written down. We'll keep that in mind. Next slide. So this is the Nebraska-Iowa Avenue outfall watershed. It's only 3 acres. It's very interesting in that it incorporates not only an outfall to the canal that goes, you can see it on that yellow line, it discharges, help me, Mayor, with the cul-de-sac name.
C.H. Mason's Way.
What? Yeah, C.H. Mason Way. Sorry. Anyway, it discharges right there to the canal. I recall doing that project when we did Nebraska Avenue. We actually had to apply on the board's behalf for a new MPDS discharge permit, received it. And so at one time it was only discharge in Nebraska Avenue, which also, if you go out there, is porous asphalt. It's another street that just performs really well. It's got the insurance policy of a huge catch basin. It's what we call an inverted crown street in that it's higher on the outside and crowns down towards the middle. And if you go out there, the catch basin's in the middle of the street. It collects all the water and goes through that piping system. But I'll tell you, under a normal storm event, you go out there and there's hardly any water reaching the catch basin. Your really intense ones, you get some water going to the catch basin and out the outfall. We added Iowa Avenue into that several years ago. There was problems there. It also has an inverted crown now, catches it, and runs by pipe from Iowa Avenue into the Nebraska Avenue C.H. Mason Way system. FYI, we are working on the beachside stormwater study via that DNREC planning grant. Can anybody guess like the absolute worst spot on Cedar Avenue for ponding during or after a storm? Yeah, California Avenue, which is not too far from this system. And we're actually looking at what the cost would be and a possible recommendation of tying that into this system. And, all the nuances associated with doing that. One of the nuances would be is that because the water levels in the canal are so high, these systems are relatively flat and the land elevations are low. So if we were to do that, we'd probably have to run the pipe level from California Avenue to Iowa, in that it wouldn't be sloped so the water could just flow downhill, but it would provide an emergency overflow from California to get it out of there. So we're looking into that as part of that study.
A couple of years ago, we did well around a lock system on the blue side.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. Yeah. That has more to do with keeping surge tides out from that end of Cedar Avenue not so much to deal with runoff from storm events, but I'll talk about that briefly in a second.
I think the Duffield report was good because it gave you an idea of what exists in the municipal limits of the city of Lewes. What I think, and I kind of asked in the question, alluded to this, it identified everything, no matter who owned it or where there was easements. And so that's kind of where it, like I said, you kind of benchmarking yourself based off that study. There's a lot that's been done since then, but then you kind of go into phase two, which is identifying what is in the public right of way or easements to understand who's responsible. Because just like, Charlie had mentioned, taking a pipe from one spot to another spot on Cedar is a state-owned road. And so it's not clear as if that would be in DelDOT's purview. Just like when we were talking about Cedar as a project where we were going to do water main and sewer main at $14+ million. Obviously, there's a stormwater component to that, and we may have another player in the game, which would be DelDOT. So this is taking more of a holistic approach when you're looking at these projects.
So just as an FYI, we did recently speak to DelDOT related to Cedar Avenue, and they're actually open to that street being porous asphalt.
And paying for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a great question. What did they say to that one?
Yeah, that is a good question in that they did say they would expect the city to maintain it afterwards, but we didn't talk about the actual capital cost. So I can follow up on that.
Look to a yes, we may have. Yeah.
So maintain it and turn over the ownership?
Probably, yeah, some kind of.
Something like that.
Just, I don't know where the bounds are.
Yeah, there are a lot of nuances to that as well.
It's typical on a state project where it comes up with a maintenance agreement after the project's completed. The Politown Road was an example. The sidewalks on 2nd Street was an example. So just for reference.
Yeah, I would say our experience is they would probably like to rid themselves of O&M responsibility for everything, but maybe, well, I don't even know about Savannah and Kings anymore, but we got it on Pilottown. I heard it here on Cedar Avenue, so we'll see.
And we're being proactive to it because we had this conversation with DelDOT when it came to Savannah Road to understand, what existed as far as any sort of agreements that predated, from a staff level or from a leadership level. And that is, again, we're starting from fresh, trying to understand ownership responsibilities and obviously trying to work towards a common goal.
Yeah. So let me move through the rest of this. And I don't want to take up all the meeting's time, but this next one is the largest.
Charlie, could I interrupt you a minute?
Sure.
Are you finished? Are you finished on the beach side?
Pretty much. I was just going to speak to just some potential ideas about it, but yeah, go ahead.
But no, during the major dewatering for the yacht club extension, can we go back to the last slide? I don't know if that'll include it or not, but as you got to they were pumping their well points across the road to where the yacht club is. And it isn't in this photograph. To where the yacht club's marina is.
What you're talking about, yes.
And then there were storm drains there. And they were going into a storm drain that appeared to go out to the point there that drained that area. I think I may have mentioned that to you at the time, maybe not, but there was definitely going into a storm drain for months as they dewatered. And it looked like a pipe was going out of that thing towards the point of that road, at the end of the road. Are you aware of that?
I'll have to look into that, Press. We may have picked it up on our survey.
Okay.
Ringing a bell.
I think there's actually two storm drains. I think one is closer to where they were crossing the road was basically where the change rooms are for the yacht club. That the pool side, and there was up the street just after you pass the entrance to the yacht club, the first entrance to the yacht club, there was a catch basin there that seemed to run down to the next one where they were pumping it to, which was again closer to closer to the point. So there were 2 catch basins out there that seemed to be connected, and it had a discharge because they kept pumping water into it for months.
Yeah,
So
those catch basins I'm actually aware of. I thought they were infiltration basins, but let me check into that.
yeah, because they pumped into it for months.
My field observation was before they started that project, that was a bad ponding area during like a intense storm event. It would pond in front of the yacht club, across Cedar Avenue, on both sides. While they were dewatering, there wasn't any ponding issue, which was interesting. They were drawing it down, I guess.
Yeah, no, I looked at it for the longest time, trying to figure out if I could see that pipe being discharged into the canal. I couldn't unless I climbed over the riprap at the end of the canal. But I think it went down that direction and didn't turn before it exited to the inlet, not the canal, and it went straight down that area. So, but if you would check that out, because there's something there.
Sorry. Those are definitely 2 of the basins that we're going to look at when we do our flushing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just curious, and just rough math.
Yeah.
So if it was 4.1 million in 2010 and arguably 5.5 in 2021, what do you think that cost would be today?
So what that is for, I didn't give a good explanation for that. When we did Bay Avenue in 2010, when we started the project, the city and the board had us look into what it would take to establish an entire system on the beach side of catch basins and piping out to the canal, or maybe out to the Delaware Bay. I doubt it, but probably most likely. So you'd have, just like we do in on the city side, catch basins every so often with pipes that lead to bigger pipes that eventually discharge into the canal. So when we did that, we came up with a price back then of doing that across the entire Cedar Bay area of $4.1 million this was in 2010, install all those catch basins and pipes and we had presumed outfall points at that time, not knowing whether we could actually get the permits for them. It was 4.1. And then I just ran a quick, hey, what would it be in 2021? 5.5. And that was probably after that was maybe 4 or 5 months after the big run up in construction prices. But, are you asking for a rough number?
Yeah.
6.5. Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
That still leaves the technical issue of, is even draining all that area to the canal feasible?
Yeah,
from sea level rise, everything else.
Exactly. And when we did that, it was just like we laid out pipes on the road and catch basins. We didn't run a complete analysis of what the slopes of the pipes would be, or even if it would work against even the normal tide range in the canal.
Pump stations. Basically building a collection system for stormwater.
Up and out.
Yep. I believe that was.
I don't remember the pump station part, but it might have been.
I thought there was a big push against the project because people did not want pump stations on Bay Avenue. If I can remember, that was a big issue.
The big push is that we were able to install the porous asphalt system at 15% of the cost of this.
I do live on Gills Neck, but there's also a Pottatown Road. When you take all that water, now you're pumping it up and out and not just flowing in. All of a sudden, our levels are going to rise in that canal, especially if it's being generated through power.
Probably, but probably not. I'd have to look at it, but in my estimation, you wouldn't be able to notice that because it's such a large waterway.
Yeah, really. Yeah, that would be a drop in the ocean.
Yeah,
which is exactly what we're connected to.
I know.
I don't
thought you'd pick that up, Tom.
All the time, roads and
yeah,
and that's obviously sea level rise.
Yeah, and occurrence of more nor'eastern surge tides and things. Yeah,
Subsidence
as well. Yep. Next slide. So this is your largest outfall drainage shed, 110 acres, and you can see it's really large, going all the way beyond Blockhouse Pond, but capturing everything from Savannah Road out to Burton Avenue and discharging at the overall overfalls point. So just so you know, that's a big one, but at that time anyway, there were 20 additional discharges to the canal on the city side.
You analyzed all those into one?
No, that's just one. Yeah. Fourth Street. Well, that's part of 4th Street goes into this system. A lot of it actually, but there's others. Yeah, for 4th Street because it's so long. Next slide. So beachside streets. Just wanted to indicate to you the ones that are porous now, or Bay Avenue, Bayview Avenue, Odessa Avenue. And the first one we ever did, surprisingly enough, in 1992, New Hampshire Avenue. So let's give it some credit too. It's holding up pretty good. We did actually put a little bit on Rhode Island Avenue. We fixed a problem at a corner years ago, but I don't count that in there because it's definitely a very small area on Rhode Island. But because Bay Avenue is so long, approximately 9,300 feet of the 21,000 feet of road on the beach side is in porous right now. Next slide. So this is what Mr. Webb was talking about in terms of, actually we did a study before we did the West Cedar Avenue study, which identified vulnerable areas across the city. And that was based on critical infrastructure and evacuation routes, and has since been backed up and supported by study. That was probably 2014-15 we did that study. And that's been backed up by other studies that the state has done. So what we identified as really vulnerable areas to surge tide were the west end of Cedar Avenue. So we did a whole study on that. We did identify the, not the lock system, but the sluice gate valve system, and raising those berms out there that are part of the Corps of Engineers dredging areas. So where that project stands right now is we're actually going towards across that wrapping up out, and just think in your mind that the city has applied for advanced assistance grant funding through FEMA, which was slightly held up when they put the halt on it over the summer, but that is all opened back up now. And we expect to hear something soon on whether that advanced assistance funding would come through for that project, which would pay for it by 90-10 grant, all the design for that project. That's where that stands. The other identified area was New Road at Canary Creek. As we all know, DelDOT's in the process of addressing that bridge and raising it on either side of the bridge. Savannah Road from the bridge to Cape Henlopen Drive. This is the area that when you come over the Savannah Road Bridge is oftentimes during a surge tide, hey, road closed, you can't get down there, etc. And then Pilot Town Road at the Canary Creek.
DelDOT ever maintain that road from a flooding situation?
Which one? Savannah? I don't know that they do much, it's a DelDOT maintained road in the grand scheme of things, but they probably do offer you some assistance, at least notification wise, I would think, when it floods like that. I don't know.
Yes, I think Lewes PD shuts the road down, and
that's
the
it.
City of Lewes shuts the road down.
Yeah.
I don't know how involved DelDOT is in that, but
yeah, I don't know if they put the word out there through their emergency systems or not. But if we were to do something along that stretch, it would certainly take coordination and collaboration with DelDOT, which we're working to develop that relationship a little bit better. More to come on that. So Pilot Town Road on Canary Creek Bridge crossing, when it floods through the inlet, it's going to flood through that Canary Creek Bridge area because it's right across from the inlet. So we were worried about that. I mean, even you sent me pictures of that, Tom. I think sometimes in the past when it really floods down at that end. So we were really worried about. I guess we had some decent news this week in that they requested BPW utility infrastructure information for underneath that Canary Creek. We're just not sure if that means they're getting ready to address the creek. They couched it around the scouring, which is underneath the bridge. And when the current runs through there really fast, it scours away usually around the supports of the bridge. So they want to try to address that structurally so that doesn't happen. Or it could be that they're looking to do something with the bridge. I thought I had heard that, but I didn't have anything formal to announce that. So the last one I want to show you is on these boards. This is Savannah Road. This is the Recircle, McPhee Street, and then School Lane, which we're doing a drainage study for School Lane right now. So at least we're going to come up with probably 5 or 6 different alternatives and make a recommendation, maybe a sub-recommendation or 2. But at least some of what we're looking at is just collecting the runoff from a relatively small drainage area that feeds to the bottom of School Lane. It's only like 1.5 acres. Because as everybody knows by now, I think that road, it slopes up to the middle and then slopes down to the end. We're at the dead end. Want to try that? Yeah, let's try this. So, yep. So anyway, our idea is to capture it all in catch basins and pipe it out to this catch basin right here into this system. So as soon as we discovered that was feasible, we went out there and surveyed everything. We met with DelDOT, and we're in the process of working it through with them. Our experience on that Coleman Avenue job was that they made us do the drainage modeling for their system to say that whatever gallons per minute our peak flow rate would be from this system would actually fit into the pipes and the discharge to the Canary Creek, which is right here. But there's a de minimis. That's the word one of my engineers use, and I always fumble it. But there's a number that they may allow if the runoff flow is low enough. They might just say you don't have to do the study. We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Into their system.
What they want to make sure is if you input drainage into their system, the rest of the system can take it, which takes a whole modeling analysis of their drainage set. So if I find out they still want that, I'd have to factor the cost of that into that recommendation. That's not the only piece that goes into that discharge. There's the whole thing from behind DeVries Circle, the creek ditch, whatever you want to call it, that runs behind. DeVries Circle also discharges into that final discharge at Canary Creek, so that would be factored into the study as well. One of the things we've been talking about is to try to get to that really low runoff flow number is to from that high point to the back, make it porous, and it really reduces it almost by half the amount of flow that will go through that pipe. So we're having ongoing discussions right now with DelDOT, trying to find out what that number is, if there's a number that even exists. They said there was. So we'll see what it is.
That's the impact on their drainage system in Savannah Road.
Exactly. Yes.
Duly noted.
Yep. Yes. That was a question going in, and they've taken ownership of it as now per these discussions. We'll see. Anyway, I just want to give you a little update. This is another relatively sizable drainage shed area for the city in terms of stormwater. Oh, yeah. Got it. You do the hard part. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So part of that goes in to also includes debris circle. I should have mentioned that. Which a second alternative we're looking at is we're not favorable to it because it has to go through people's yards more, but tying into this pipe here and allowing it to go out. we'll see how it goes. But we're still finalizing everything on that study. But I just wanted to give you some little update on what that looked like, because that study, that report will be coming to the board and the city in short order.
How probable is it we were talking about other avenues?
This one? Well, I don't want to say anything until I develop a cost estimate, because, that certainly is a big factor in the feasibility and going into our recommendation. It's feasible in terms of technical. We can put catch basins at the foot of school lane and run pipe over to this system. It's just like, do you really want to get into the side property lines of people's homes and yards on the side? That'll all be factored into our recommendations too, or at least brought to the board and city's attention that, hey, here's some constructability issues that you're going to want to consider if you go with that recommendation.
I assume more cost effective, but maybe more disruptive.
I don't know it'll be all that much. It is a slightly shorter length of pipe, but going up the road is simple open cut pipe situation going through people's yards. I'm going to add something per lineal foot for the disturbance and restoration of those yards. So I have to see what it falls out when we do it.
Yeah, and the time frame of being able to negotiate these things.
Could be, yeah, definitely, yeah. And those are only just a couple of the items we're looking at right now. Any other questions?
Anything else from the board?
Charlie.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, Press.
Okay, I'll make sure you hear me. How about the problem there at the edge of the Great Marsh Park? You know what I mean?
At the end of Harborview?
Harborview, yeah. There's two ditches, the concrete ditch and the earthen ditch that run parallel to one another. That's been a problematic area.
I would say Robin and I are working on that. It may be as much of a maintenance issue as anything, but I'll let Robin speak to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've looked at trying to find some old maps, because I guess the big debate is how the whole system for Harborview subdivision was constructed originally, how it was modified, the reason for the modification, and if it's even our system. That was the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to research some old plans and things like that. Sharon and Kim found some old documents.
There's also, I've been told, I keep getting asked about this. There's also a pipe that evidently has been put in recently that looks like it's heading from New Road over to that ditch.
Yeah, it appears there's a pipe that got installed into the ditch that comes from the house on New Road that's not in the city.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the question
is, yeah, that's the one.
Is that person allowed to do it since they're not paying since they're an out of town or city resident? Should they allow to be doing it? But I guess that goes back to the same thing. Who enforces that, whether it's ours or not? I guess that's all part of the big conversation.
So you're still looking into that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thanks. I keep getting asked about that.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I got a question. Is the purpose of this to really inform the stormwater management fee, and then we discussed the policy whether we should look to take over some private systems? And if so, the second part is if so, how do we? Charlie's obviously been able to report out on what the city or the stormwater management aspects are. How would we go about informing ourselves of the cost and these private?
So I think the intent of this was we had promised the ratepayers that we would look at it from a holistic perspective. And this is part of that, the schoolhouse lane, the ditches on the beach. And So this is part of the information gathering. Once we get the report and get better idea of ownership issues, I think then that will allow us to do that.
So I think in that episode, I think some of the areas outside of it that weren't addressed at all would be like, Donovan Smith, Savannah Place, Henlopen Gardens, Bay Breeze. Some of those neighborhoods, aren't, that sit on the periphery, if you will, of the areas that we discussed. I think if this morphs into a larger discussion, we need information on those systems, I would assume.
And there's complexity on who owns what drains into what, the maintenance, the operations. I think really the idea was when the stormwater tariff was created, it was created to maintain what was existing. And so the system was built out, and the collection fee that is assumed in each person's bill pays to maintain that. And when you start to get into the discussion of expanding the network to take on the private stuff, it's almost what Newcastle County did, where you got to shift gears and it becomes a pretty extreme liability. And then you have to have the framework to start recouping those costs. So it might, maybe you, because you have the,
No, and that's right. So the first step, I think, of the exercise is actually getting a picture of what's there. So once you have a picture of what it is, then you can start breaking it down and understanding more in terms of what elements or what more information you need. But it first starts with that picture of, all right, how does water flow and what systems are involved? And then you can take it from there.
So water does not flow uphill.
Usually.
of course, man.
But it is a complex situation. The more granular it gets, the harder it gets. So I talked this about my neighbor Rosa. The city allowed a pervious surface, pervious surface, 2 minutes over.
Mm-hmm.
Now the water went dark.
Mm-hmm.
So really, these decisions, these outcomes, it's going to be a long, onerous process.
Mm-hmm. And I would just say that those issues are numerous related to the collection and piping system that I've tried to describe to you today. If you take on stormwater management facilities at private developments, let's say, that doubles the complexity because each one of those is different and requires a different level of operation and maintenance.
And I would add to Earl, what you just said, it also overlaps into the city's jurisdiction, totally outside of ours, about pervious impervious coverage, which has been debated for 10 years now. And, it's difficult with small lot sizes like we have here, property rights, but the more impervious we allow, the more the drainage issue becomes.
And we've made some progress, I think, through the environmental subcommittee that hasn't quite reached even the planning commission yet, and then finally city council in terms of code revisions related to that. But, I think what we're finding out through that committee's exercise is that encouraging homeowners to use best management practices would go a long way through education of different kinds.
So this report that you showed us, that's not anywhere near final, right?
That's not part of any
presentation.
Yeah, that's not part of any report that I'm doing. That's just
Historical.
quick summary, not quick, but a summary of what's out there now.
Yeah.
The two reports that we're doing are the beachside stormwater study and the school lane drainage study. Those are the two that reports will be coming in short order.
Okay. And in terms of, I guess maybe a question for you, Mike, how will they find out where there are easements? How difficult will that be for GMB to add to the reports?
That was the question that I asked. There were, and I would imagine this is kind of an iterative process as we kind of go. You kind of, what do we have? What pieces are we missing? How do we fill in the gaps? And you all you work towards kind of mapping out kind of a comprehensive overview of where these things sit. And then the next question becomes, okay, we know what the facts are. well, now what do we want to do about it? And those become additional conversations. But the first step is getting that picture. And so Charlie's group can kind of piece together from information they have where there are gaps, we can work together to fill it in and take it that way.
That's what we're doing. Just as Russ mentioned about the harbor here. I mean, the amount of time that Robin has spent reviewing the documents associated with that, it is not a snap your fingers and it's there. I mean, you're going through old plans, you're going through deed searches, Sussex County Recorder of Deeds, old plan. It's pretty crazy.
And I mean, I think at some point down the line, while we're trying to get a holistic look at it, we then may want to carve out sections to get the low-hanging fruit portions, because trying to solve world hunger in this situation or world overwatering we'll probably never get there. But we need to know, as they've said, the extent of what the problem is, then figure out what to focus on, and then.
In terms of the easements, I totally agree, because, for instance, when we work on this school lane study, it's so finite, right? It's not that big of an area that we can easily identify where we're going to need easements for any recommended alternative. When you look at the whole beach side, it's a little bit of a different animal, because there's a lot of pipes that we think we've identified them all. I'm pretty certain we have. And, we can actually comment on whether they're in the right of way or if the BPW utility easement is necessary.
And then that goes back to the EPA, because that was one of the things that we had brought up, is the assessment that the EPA was offering is to come in and look at utilities that struggle with the influence of flooding from heavy rain events, storms, a influence from like a canal or the ocean. And they did one for it was Cambridge. They did a big study for Cambridge, Chesapeake Beach, and Crisfield. So we would be partnering with another municipality or utility, but we would be the first in the state of Delaware that would go through this program with the EPA.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. So, new business. Open forum general discussion on the extension proposal for auditing services. Kim in Austin.
All right, so I'll turn it over to Kim, but I may summarize it anyway. Essentially, we had a contract with ZNA, Zelenowski Axelrod. They have done all of our auditing services for the past, I believe the original contract was 5 years. They do a terrific job. And I think we work great with them. And so the idea would be, and what we brought to you is two different options. One is for a 3-year extension and one is for a 5-year extension. I think staff's recommendation is to do a 5-year extension. That's just our opinion. Kim?
Correct.
How much do we pay them?
Right now, this year, we're going to pay them $37.7, which is going to be our starting for a 5-year. They'll honor the same amount.
So basically the difference between the 5-year and the 3-year is they're waiving the increases for the first 2 years.
The first year.
First year, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Which would compound on each other.
Right.
Look, having an auditing firm that knows you and works with you and strengths and weaknesses is a huge advantage to have.
And even, I didn't come from a government background, and with all the GASBs coming through, like they've helped me so much about like understanding them and working through entries and everything.
We've been able to do it all. They used to come on site, and we've shifted to we do everything electronic. All of our reporting electronic. They haven't even came for anything on site. So it's pretty seamless.
I wish our wastewater treatment plant people had this kind of a fee structure, because it didn't grow very much here.
That's our recommendation.
Any questions?
concerns you had at all?
No.
Motion to, well-
Engagement if they suddenly change their modus operandi.
I don't know if that's actually in the agreement. I don't see that.
Oh, out clause.
You wanna,
Right.
Right, it's, you know, if we're locked in and they
5 years, and for some
Right.
reason.
3 years.
It talks about the last paragraph that the board accepts the contract to provide services for the years ending March 31st, all the way through. Please indicate by signing the acknowledgement below, and we will formalize the terms of our agreement in an engagement letter.
This is just letter of intent.
Yeah. So you would have, what I anticipate based off of reading that, you would have a formal agreement come back. So this is just providing, if you would like a 5-year term to continue with ZNA, we would execute this, and then you would have a formal agreement with terms come back.
And so the formal agreement would include the digital exchange method as opposed to now regulations have changed. Impressive. Or
I don't think they would get to that detail. They would just tell you that these are the services they provide, whether they come on site or they do it remotely. That's just me, because it wasn't. I don't think it was in the previous agreement.
And I just want to correct one thing. I mean, I'm not so sure that I would view this as a true letter of intent. I mean, typically those will expressly say, you know, this isn't binding unless there is actually an agreement. I think you can read this to say that there is some expectation. It does say we will formalize the terms of our agreement in an engagement letter, but I think you're actually signing an acknowledgement and signing on. So I would keep that in mind. If I have not seen, there's nothing in this that talks about an out. I haven't seen an actual agreement on that. What you could do is like we've done before, the board has different options in this situation. One is if you wanted to punt, I don't know what the timing of this is. 2, if you were comfortable, but you wanted staff to be comfortable on there being an out clause, you could say, you know, approved conditioned on staff reviewing with them an ability and there being an ability to terminate. Or so, I mean, I think those are the options you can have. And again, if there isn't a rush, then, you know, maybe the best way, if that's an issue that's important to the board, that we get clarity on that and then report back in the next month. It's the pleasure of the board.
There's not a rush. Yeah.
So I think the motion needs to be whether to proceed, as the way Mike said, with either the 3-year or the 5-year.
Or to punt. I mean, you could defer until where there is no motion. If the board says no, take a look, directing staff to take a look at what is there an out clause, then you'll just take it up at your next meeting.
We have an existing engagement letter from them that would form the basis for.
Our contract expired this year, but we do have a prior contract.
Because the first sentence says this is a contract. So.
Barbara, I agree. That's my point where I think this, you are signing on when you take this action. So if there's a question that you would like answered, I would take the time to do that.
Table this then till, how bad is our November meeting looking?
That's that one. Yeah.
All right. I know, but we don't want to rush. 9. An open forum general discussion on a proposal to lease or own delivery of our TEREX bucket truck. Once again, Kim and Austin.
So we had our bucket truck that was supposed to be coming in November. It got pushed back until March. We wanted to explore some options for leases. You have a quote from TEREX, which is actually expired because they will not lock in rates. But First American would lock in rates, which would be option 2 and 4 on their proposal. And you can see their rates of the lock-in. Their non-locked rate is very competitive with TEREX. So that would be a decision of the board of if, number 1, we want to lease to help with cash flow. And number 2, if we want to wait until the truck is closer to delivery. And if not, then if we would lock the rate.
So from a cash flow perspective, what's your recommendation?
With the difference in the payouts, I would prefer a 2-year.
To put in perspective, the idea behind this is that it allows us to use cash for capital, and you take an asset that we're depreciating over 20 plus years, and you're saying you would pay it over 2 years. So it frees up yourself a little bit. Plus, I can tell you that the market for these things is absolutely insane. We just talked about it today. They're giving quotes 3 to 4 years. So we're talking about taking on another bucket truck because all of them are spaced almost identical for age and reference. We like to give our guys and have them have the most up-to-date and safe equipment. A lot of it's 20 plus years old now. So a new bucket truck is 3 to 4 year lead time, and they're pricing out about, to put it in perspective, about $150,000 more than the All-Tech that we got in 2019. So that's just so you guys are aware, that's the unique part of this business. I do not understand it, but that's what we're dealing with. I mean, you don't have to make any decision today because we originally thought that we were going to take delivery this month. It actually got punted, and the digger and the bucket truck are scheduled to be in March and April. We could not bring you anything from TEREX because TEREX won't lock you in that far out. First American will. The clause is that you're locking yourself in for that number, but you're at the mercy of what the market does. So
what's the of not locking in now with the uncertainties in the markets? I mean, there's a risk both ways, upside and down.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I don't.
That's true. And how?
Has the finance committee taken this up?
We have not.
No.
I mean, I know there's at least one person on there that loves little games like that to evaluate.
But I guess what are you trying to evaluate?
What the best financial options are. I mean, I know we have to make a decision whether we should use it for the cash or not. But I think looking at the options that have been given to us, you'd get different results each way.
Yeah, but I guess I was asking you a slightly different question of how far out do we want to punt? I mean, delivery in March.
Yeah.
I assume we could, between now and March, if the rates go sky high, then by not locking in now, or rates could come back down to completely normal.
What is normal?
Does anyone believes that? I got a bridge to sell you over New Road. I just throwing that out there. I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And we can only give you one to compare it to, just because we literally thought we were going to take delivery this month.
Yeah. I just think it might be a good thing to run through the finance committee to get their input. It's a big financial decision, and each option has its pros and cons. And I'm not good at predicting where the interest rates are going. Maybe somebody else was.
What do you think?
Are the two companies, is there preference of one company over the other?
Richard, could you speak into the microphone? It's a little bit tough to hear you. I'm sorry. Yeah.
is
Okay. Is there a, are the two companies competitive?
What I will tell you is First American gives you a better price the more that you spend. So if you're looking at taking on the digger and the bucket truck at the same time, you have the potential of saving a larger amount if you basically fund yourself for those two purchases, which is going to be probably $300,000 or $600,000 as perspective. TEREX is looking at it per the equipment. I mean, that's the manufacturer. So it's like, for example, the city got police vehicles. They finance them through Ford lease. So it kind of the ease of working with the manufacturer, or you go to another option. And you can go to Fulton. I mean, Fulton's another option. We were kind of up against the situation of we were going to take delivery, and they said, okay, this is your delivery date. And then 2 weeks later, now it got moved 4 months. So we can bring back anything you guys want. It can go to the finance committee. It's just, this is the idea that we had now that you're starting to take equipment that used to be 175 to 190,000, and now it's 300 to 350, 360,000 on 4-year lead times. I mean, we ordered the bucket truck that we ordered was supposed to be a 16-month lead time. We ordered it in November of 21. It will be delivered, if it's delivered on time, March of 24. Yeah. 30 months.
Another question is, would the 6-month rate lock-in be at risk, right?
At risk how?
Well,
it doesn't come in.
If it doesn't come in time.
It is actually in here. If there's a delay, 10 basis points for every month, I believe it was. No.
But out to the market, which rate would you get for a purchase?
Today?
Yeah.
Let us work internally, and we'll bring something back. It'll be easier. But we'll work with finance committee too.
Okay. So we'll table that also for future meeting. All right. Agenda item 10, open forum general discussion on a resolution for supplemental funding of the wastewater pump project. Austin and Mike.
So this resolution is to go after additional funding for the Headworks. So we went out to bid. The bids came in a little bit higher than expected, and so this is supplemental funding of $350,000. I believe it's 20% of the original amount through DNREC. That's to do. I believe the process is the same as far as the closing, and so we have a resolution before you for the Board of Public Works. There will be also one for the City of Lewes for their November meeting, and then we would go to closing with Saul Ewing and go through the entire process, and then this would get added on as additional funding on that loan.
And the only thing I would add on these resolutions are prepared by bond counsel. So they've been reviewed and prepared by bond counsel. They're presented to the board in that manner. This is a 2-vote process because it's a resolution.
And so there a motion to have the resolution read by title only.
Second.
Oh, I thought we were going to make him read the whole thing.
Mr. President, members of the board, resolution number 23-12, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Board of Public Works of the City of Lewes, Delaware, authorizing borrowing of $350,000 from the Delaware Water Pollution Control Revolving Fund, acting by and through the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control for the purpose of financing additional costs associated with the Howard Seymour Water Reclamation Facility Headworks and Pump Project, and authorizing other necessary action. Mr. President, members of the board, resolution number 23-12 has been read by title only. Board's consideration.
Can I ask in the future we have shorter titles?
This was bond counsel.
Okay, so I think then we're looking for a motion to approve the resolution with the contingency that it has to get mayor and city council approval. So
moved.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Thank you very much. Andrew, it's in your hands. Okay. Open for discussion on a selection of a date for our November and December combined meeting. So I guess the first item here is that, typically at the end of the year, we try to put them together because of the holidays. I would ask staff if that's reasonable this year, given everything we have, or
I would ask that we combine them sometime in the December timeframe.
okay. All right. So then if everyone gets their calendar, let's choose a date.
I'm open to sort of.
If it works for everybody, I've already reserved for December 6th. It's typically we usually do the 1st December. So it'd be great.
That's good. Yeah.
One more time.
Mike is about to drop the bombshell that he is going to be not in this country.
No, I will be in the country, but I do have a conflict. And so if it works for everybody else, though, I can have coverage on that and make sure that
I thought you were going to be in Antarctica.
No, I'll be in Antarctica at the end of the year, but
December, but the end of the year.
The end is still December. But on the 6th, I do personally have a conflict, so I will not be able to be here personally. Again, I can have coverage. I would not, if it works for everybody else, I would not schedule around me, but I just want to be upfront.
Earliest you could.
Earliest on December 6th?
No.
Earliest in December.
Oh no, I will not be leaving until Christmas Day, so I'm around December. I could meet the 7th.
It's Thursday. Works for me.
Works for me.
Yeah, that's good for me.
Oh.
It'll be a long day of meetings. No.
How about the 5th?
Is that a quarterly?
Yes, quarterly. No, it's a holiday. I think it's a holiday.
We can
That into the holiday luncheon.
we can still make that work. If you want to do the 7th, we can still make that work.
Well, I mean, not to make, does the 5th work?
Yep.
Mike, okay.
Day it works, and so the 5th can be risky for me. But again, I mean, I don't want to hold up the schedule. So
Okay, the 7th then.
7. Okay.
What time?
Okay, so it'll be at the regular 4:00 time. And city council chambers open?
Find out.
H Park's been meeting at Park Rock, right? So that's now. That's on the city's calendar right now, H Park, but they're meeting over there.
Okay, so the November, December meeting for the Lewes BPW will be December 7th at 4:00 in city council chambers.
I apologize for being the difficult one.
No, you don't.
I do.
So. All right. Open forum general discussion on updating the water meter policy.
So what we did from a staff level, and this kind of bleeds into the next agenda item too, is that we did the compilation of policies about a year ago, if I can remember, a little over a year ago. And so the purpose of what we're doing from a staff level now is we're going down through the existing policies and seeing where they can be tightened up. And so, for example, this is one that we would really like to bring up to current day and age and also adjust to add strict trigger points associated with it. And what this has to do with is that all water meters are specifically laid out in a meter pit and at the property. We run into instances where we have water meters that are in basements, in crawl spaces, and if you read the existing policy, it doesn't speak to what triggers the movement of that. And so what we try to do is incorporate that into this 4.3.4, as well as having target dates associated with it, like within 30 or 60 days. And also the notification policy of, okay, you send a letter or you send an email to start that process. None of that is laid out in the existing policy as it is today. We want to add that because we currently do it today, but then when questions get asked from a member of the public, obviously all we say is it needs to be in a pit at the front of the property. And they're saying, well, why now? Why not 2 years ago? Or why not when the property sold last time? So this would lay out clearly that, at the time of sale, if you can't access it for meter reading purposes or for the ERT, it puts all that into a document. And it kind of putting the cart before the horse, but we wanted to provide an example of what we want to do from a staff level to tighten it up and make our lives a little bit easier and add clarity, because obviously when the board passes policy, it directs staff. So you don't have to act on this tonight. What we wanted to do is provide it to you so that you had an example of what we're doing. We're going through the tariff as well, which is an absolute behemoth. But we've collectively had 3 or 4 meetings to work through and bring that up to date as well. So that's pretty much just trying to lay it out there. Again, it's not an action. We have it on as an action item, but I think it just leads into the next topic, which is scheduling a meeting to talk about these, including the investment policy, including creating a debt coverage ratio policy, all those things that we've been talking at Finance Committee, even at mitigation, because mitigation has talked about making recommendations to the board and incorporating some of that. So it's just kind of showing you that we got to a really great document and now we just need to go through and start updating it. And, I've talked to Mike about the process associated with that, and that's another thing we probably hit on.
So when would you want us to send you your policy?
Well, this is taking care of an existing. What I would like to do is schedule a date to where that is the only topic for the day, and we sit down and we go through it and we can talk about it from what is existing, what is future. I've had this on my list from an email that Mike sent from, I think, like November of 22 or August of 22 or 21. So I know we've been crazy busy, but we're going into shoulder season, so I think it makes sense to schedule that, sit down and go through it. Not when Mike's in.
Over the holidays, we're okay.
Yeah.
Well, unless we all want to have a board meeting in the Antarctica.
There were a few things in this I didn't understand, and is now the time to raise them?
You can ask them and we can go through them.
Okay. First of all, you're moving things to an Exhibit K. Will that be easier to change than a policy? Is that why you're doing that?
Yes.
Yes.
Question. It depends on how it's set up, but we can set it up that way.
Okay. And secondly, in that third paragraph down, the all blue paragraph, you talk about 60 days to make the meters accessible, but then you also have a sentence about relocating the water meters at property transfers. or with building renovations. And what if it's already in a good place? This seems to imply that you would also then relocate it for those kinds of things.
Those are typically when we identify them. So like if an ERC goes bad or a property transfer, because that's when you're going and getting a final reading for the property. That's when you typically run across the scenarios. And some of them are like some of them have history to them. Like at some point in time, somebody allowed them to do that. But then you have policy that tells you that that's not how it's supposed to be. And then you get into the access issue because the meters are the BPW responsibility while the pit is the customer's responsibility. Milton did something recently where they basically said, you have 2 years and you need to move it into a pit at your expense.
I think Barbara's question is that, it's not, if it's in an appropriate location, it should be permitted to stay. And so I think kind of wordsmithing things like that makes sense. So, relocation of the water meter if required by the board, something like that. We can address that.
Well, yeah.
I thought that was a little confusing too, because you're saying if you identify them, they got to do it in 60 days. But then you come back with a paragraph that says these other conditions would also generate it.
Right.
They seem like it's confusing. Why wouldn't you do it if you first knew that was happening?
It's about wordsmithing, but what it did is it just it had the trigger points of when does this typically happen at settlements, transfers, building reservations, water leaks, yada, yada.
I think if you just if clear that up a little bit to point out why you're doing the two different cases. And Barbara, you finished? Do you have more?
One other one.
Go ahead.
Where if the water meter is found to be defective and it's got to be repaired or replaced, who pays for that? That's not spelled out. I don't
Board of Public Works. We own the meters.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
By who?
Yeah, by whom? Yeah.
For the repair replacement?
Yeah.
Yes.
Last line.
Yeah. If it's ours, it's ours. And if it's not clearly in there, we'll put it in there.
Okay.
I have a couple minor things too. In the first paragraph there, we first mentioned ERT. Nobody's going to know what that is. Why don't you say what it is and then use the abbreviation or just to. Yeah.
Friends.
And in the beginning of this,
defined in the definitions. I have to go back and look, but it might be defined in the overall policy.
That would be fine. Yeah. In the second paragraph, the all water meters, shouldn't that just be meter?
Yeah, it's
taken out.
It's taken out. There's a little dash.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm sorry. And then the next line down, where it says premises at, I would think, why did you take at a location out? It seems to me that fit. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it could probably stay in there.
I don't know why it would be taken out.
Just think maybe I'm just trying to read it real quick again.
Go ahead.
I think it's wordsmithing again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's all this stuff is. And then in the first line of the next blue paragraph there, it says, if obtainable.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about if you're, and this is just providing an example, if you're on 4th Street, if you're on 3rd, if you're on 2nd, sometimes you physically don't have the space if you put it in.
So but who determines that? I guess you would, but why don't you just change that to unless otherwise approved by the BPW? They're the only things I had. I thought it was fine otherwise.
In the first paragraph, I think also it's just a matter of wordsmithing. The sentence that it seems to be a little bit of a run on installation of the pit setter must be performed by a licensed plumber at the expense of the owner, blah, 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 together with the ERT, must be performed by the Lewes BPW person, and then at no additional charge. I think that just needs to be reversed. Put a period and make it, there is no additional charge for the installation or something like that. I think it's confusing as written.
Yeah, and I think just one of the clarifications to make here as well. So this has not been gone through my shop for a review yet. And so the way the order of operation here is what you're seeing here are kind of staff suggestions in terms of overarching policy. Once there's a discussion and understanding of the policy, then it's on my plate to make sure that the verbiage and goes through a legal review. So all of that will happen prior to the workshop. But staff wanted to get it to the board on kind of the policy items. So all these are good questions, and I agree with them, but it hasn't gone through a legal review yet.
I know, you make us talk goodly. So.
Try.
All right, so and so now we need to sit item 13, open forum general discussion on BPW policies and to set a workshop date. So we're not having two meetings, but we're down to one meeting, and now we're having. Yes. All right, so.
Probably looking at December again, because Earl's going to be gone the week of the 13th. Following week's Thanksgiving. And then you got a week to recover from Thanksgiving. So you can either look at doing it after the board meeting,
Time.
What about the Thursday after Thanksgiving?
30th?
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm good in the afternoon.
Yeah, you don't have to do, like, if you want to do it at 4, you can, but you can do it at 2. However it works. If Mike's virtual or in person, doesn't matter.
Well, I would think since this is the workshop, we probably want to do it during the daytime.
You said during the daytime, Tom?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was talking. I don't know that we're constrained to doing it at night. So
Yeah, I agree. I'd rather do it earlier.
Well, 23rd, but we're moving, we can't read, right, holidays. So we typically do ours in the morning though, right? So theoretically by 10, we'd be done by 2, right? At least give us a hard stop. If you want to schedule yours at 2, at least we'd have to be done by 2.
Smart.
Andrew, is that a request on here? All right, so then I think we should move it to another day because I would not want. All right, so
30th.
the 30th of November at 2 in council chambers. Town is burning down. Open forum, general discussion on water tower logo and designs. Robin?
Got the viewpoints now.
So the last meeting, one of the items that was brought up, I believe Richard made the comment of the viewpoints from the tower or the viewpoints from down and up at the tower. And so B&B did drone shots. Yeah, you can play it. Fast, don't miss it. So where you started out at right there was looking at Clay Road, and so this is turning towards like the State Tower and towards Savannah Road. That's the rotating here.
Have to be at the height of which the tower would be.
I believe so. That's exactly where they started.
Approximately the middle where the logo.
Say that again.
Middle of the logo,
Would be where?
at the top of the tree line.
Yeah, like the camera.
Okay.
The middle of the logo.
Okay.
So this is where it opens up to the school district property. So that's the football field, soccer field.
And the idea is whatever you can see, they can see the tank.
Yeah, so you can see that tree right there. Maybe a little bit in the way, but there's also going to be trees that have to be removed as part of the entrance to the site itself because we're going to enter off of Wellfield Lane. I know that's the biggest thing.
Athletic field.
Yeah. The idea would be is that if Cape was involved in this project, he would have that logo facing towards their campus.
Clear shot to the playing field. So
This is just turning back. Obviously, you can see the trees step down right there. They really step up as you get past the tower. And that's looking right back at Clay Road.
Yeah.
Kings Highway.
Right.
that's okay.
Yeah. View shed looks to be no issue here. So it's not, none of this is holding up the moving forward of GMB on the actual tower piece. This is just really the whole idea of the discussion of the logo and, having our side with the BPW and City Crest and the backside having one of the Cape logos. This is really stemming from that discussion.
Looks like you won't be able to see the other side though, from most of the city from this drawing. Whoops, this stuff.
So I think from a position standpoint, that's going to be at like, I can't even do it, but that's going to be pointing towards Savannah Road. So if you put the reciprocal on the other side, you'd be facing right to Clay Road, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be visible from Kings Highway
Yeah.
and Clay Road. Right.
But not from Savannah.
Our logo?
Yeah.
No, because the tank will be in the way.
When you say Savannah, like which logo? Are you talking the Cape logo or our logo?
Our logo.
Yeah, you probably won't be able to see it from Savannah. You would be able to see it from Kings coming in.
Right.
I say because
Yeah.
180 degrees from each other. So
Right.
And that growth of trees that comes into the property, is that going to block it from Clay Road for the most part? If you're coming down Clay Road, when will you first see the logo?
I think where that red line is where you'll see it from there over to the rest of the road.
Okay.
It isn't. You're right, Press. It is a narrow look there.
Yeah.
but it's 90 degrees from Clay Road, and you wouldn't be. Keep your eyes on the road.
Yeah.
Hope the bus walking, not you.
And like our town, it'll become invisible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
That was the gist of it. That was the outcome of last month's meeting.
Choose their logo. Or how you plan to do that?
Well, I think that's one of the discussion topics, whether or not, and they gave 2 proposals on which one. I don't know. It made it seem like they were really kind of asking for feedback from us. We can obviously let them decide. And then you also have I know there's been mention on whether or not your expectation is they pay for the cost of their logo or if that's wrapped into the project. So
How much is the cost to paint something? And how often does it have to be done?
So I don't know the cost of what it would be to paint it, but you would just refresh it every time you repaint the tank, which is every 15 to 20 years is when you can choose a new logo, unless you want to do it another time. But
I did 20 years ago.
And I would like to point out, like, that's where the logo is. The tank's going to extend up another 20 to 25 feet. So you're going to see the top of the tank for a much further distance, just so you're aware.
I think it's a little strange that you won't see the city's logo from most of the town. But if that doesn't matter to people,
Well, I think kind of regardless, even if you put our logo on both sides, you wouldn't see it from most parts of town. I mean, it's far enough out there.
Yeah.
I mean, the other one happens to be centrally located, and it's right outside my office window.
I see it on the bike van. It's amazing how long you can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about cell towers, cell equipment? Where does that go?
That goes on the very, very top. We literally were having this discussion earlier this week because you have 2 options when it comes to railing. You have heavy duty and light duty. And that is all equated out to how many antennas you want on the tower. So we're as part of this project, we're putting in conduits so that if somebody wants to be on the tower, the conduit's there for them to go up to the top of the tower, pending an agreement, of course.
And so the lighter is totally free.
Yeah, there's a safety railing at the top, like the very, very top, because that's where the hatch would come open and you could walk. You could walk on the very, very top.
Not this guy.
Yeah, you could walk there.
I'm sure. To install the logos, that's done off-site.
No, it's done.
So they'll be hanging scaffolds.
Yeah, Earl's doing it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it's Earl and my mother will do it.
That's if you guys want to think on it, on the logo, or however you want to do it.
I think they just need to show us what logo they'd like, and then we can opine on that. But I'm sure it'll be fine.
Okay, I can go back to them and say what their preference is,
and whether they're going to pay for it, right?
I've already set the expectation that it's been discussed. But what I'll do is I'll circle back and say, we're looking at what logo you would prefer to have on the tank, and also the board's expectation is that you would be paying for whatever costs associated with it. The only thing we can do is you could probably touch base with Tidewater and see what they paid to put Cape's logo and Tidewater's logo on the back. But
we can get a call.
Because I think the idea is to put, we would put either, I personally like the Lewes like black block lettering. I like our logo lettering, but the idea would be city crest on one side and Board of Public Works crest on the other.
That we try to city.
Yeah, 1% of
$1 per night.
we deduct 1% off the in lieu of franchise.
All right, moving on. I'm sorry, what?
No, I'm good.
Open forum general discussion on wastewater treatment long-range plan.
Give this one.
Skip the cross connection.
Yeah.
Cross connections.
I'm sorry, I wrote notes next to it. Duly noted. Open forum general discussion on the cross connection plan. Robin.
Okay, what you have before you is the draft document with all the revised or suggested revisions. Most of them were submitted by Press and Barbara. Again, like I said before, I'd spoke with Bill from Rural Water and Jerry from HydroCorp. Bill from Rural Water did make some suggestions also. From the last document, most of this is all minor changes. There's some grammar, spelling issues. I think Press and Barbara asked for some definitions to be added. And Bill, he had some language changes trying to make the wording consistent with what the actual code that's referenced in there says. I sent this to Mike's office. Pete's looked at it and looked at the resolution. I don't think Mike's.
Oh, I've looked at it.
Okay. But right now, what it is, it's just a marked up version. Just opening it up for discussion. If there's any questions, any concerns, any more comments.
Robin, I do have, maybe I'm not reading things properly. Line 82, what is to inspect reclaimed water and reuse water systems? What's that all about? I guess I read it and not questioned it before.
It's always been in there. I think if there,
yeah, I know that, and I haven't brought it up, but
if it don't really, I guess right now doesn't pertain to us because we don't do reclaimed water.
No.
But I guess it's just all part of the plan. It's in the general portion of all the plans. I guess in case we ever do decide, or if there is a reason to do it, it's already in your plan.
I don't think it needs to be there. We could always add it, but it's not a big deal.
So, I mean, this would be if we ever install purple pipe.
Right. Yeah. Right.
The isolate the domestic system.
And it's just basically what's been put in there, and I guess it's in there in case we decide. So we don't have to. So we wouldn't have to change the plan again.
Yeah.
I don't think it hurts anything to have it in there now.
No, that's
probably not. I just okay.
So the recommendation on this is just going to piggyback, and I spoke to Austin earlier. So what you have in front of you is kind of the red line marked up version to kind of show the edits right now. Given the length of the document, given kind of what it is, you have until February of 2024, which is right around the corner. But if there are no other edits, no other questions, then the recommendation is we accept the edits, give you a clean version, and present on the agenda at the December meeting adoption of the clean version. So now's the opportunity, if there are remaining questions, things to flag, things in edits and whatnot. If not, then we will take this, put a clean version, and it'll be before you in December to adopt.
Do we need to do it in December, or can we put it off till the January meeting? When if
February is the drop dead date.
February 1st?
It should get done in December.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I was just
ideally,
trying to be judicious about.
This has been, I think, reviewed several times. I mean, I understand there's.
And hopefully it'll be relatively quick. So, all right.
I didn't have any more questions. I thought it looked good.
I think
I'm okay.
Rehoboth passed theirs in September.
That's correct.
So
we'll clean it up.
Go forth.
And that in the resolution, and then present in December.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Robin.
Yes, thank you.
Long haul. All right. Open forum general discussion on the wastewater treatment. As I said up front, we're somewhat in a little bit of a holding pattern till the beginning of November. Once we get the GHG report and the ocean outfall, we can start moving forward again. But we did receive one comment from the public, and it's been acknowledged, and we'll address that at our next wastewater treatment plant workshop. So Austin, anything else you think we need to add at this point? Okay. All right. Call to the public. Press, Bill? All right, motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
all right, so Richard gets the motion, Barbara gets the second. All right, thank you all.